This video was inspired by MagoMan25's A Dark Age Fan Sonic retrospective video and Chow Mix's The Game That Made Me Leave the Sonic series video. What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Sodium285. So today I thought I'd share with you the full story of my relationship with Power Rangers to celebrate me reaching 100 subscribers, and B, because back when I had first joined YouTube in October 2020, I hadn't really made it known that I was a huge Power Rangers fan. I had made it known that I'm a huge Marvel fan, especially Spider-Man. I had made it known here and there that I'm a big Ninja Turtles fan and Sonic fan. I had even made it known that I was a fan of DC. It's also the most interesting relationship I've had with any franchise, so I thought now is the time to tell you basically my Power Rangers origins, my beginnings with the franchise, why I left the fandom, and what caused me to come back and embrace being a Power Rangers fan again. The year was 2008. I was 7 years old. I was living in England at the time. I had woken up to watch some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Horrid Henry on a fine Sunday morning. I had turned the TV on for CITV. Keep in mind, at the time at least, CITV often aired syndicated shows a year after they would have come out. However, I was early, and Totally Spies was on. My sister's a huge Totally Spies fan, so I watched it with her. Power Rangers Operation Overdrive would be on next before Ninja Turtles. Now, I had a vague idea on who the Power Rangers were at the time. I had a couple of Dino Thunder action figures, the Red and Yellow Rangers. As well as that, I had a couple of McDonald's SPD toys and some Mystic Force walkie-talkies. I have no idea where any of these old toys are now, but they're probably in bad condition. So while I had heard of Power Rangers by this point in my life, I only knew that they're spandex-wearing superheroes like Spider-Man, my favorite superhero of all time. I had never watched an episode of Power Rangers before, so I thought, why not check it out before Ninja Turtles starts? The episode was Man of Mercury Part 2. The action was a lot of fun to see on screen, the Fig Cats were great villains, but the moment in the episode that changed my life and was what made me go from this is cool superhero stuff to I love these characters was when, after Tyson tells the Overdrive Rangers about the cave-in incident and why he feels he can't join them, Ronnie runs after him to tell him not to blame himself for what had happened at the cave-in, and these inspirational words that really hit me.
Look, we don't always win. Sometimes the bad guys do, but we can't let that stop us. That is what makes us heroes.
Those inspirational words, with its mixture of reality and optimism, define not only what I look for from Power Rangers, but also from superhero media in general. It's why I love superhero movies like Logan, Black Panther, Captain America Civil War, Iron Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man Far From Home, and so many more so much, and why Hawkeye and WandaVision are my favorite MCU shows. From that day on, I loved Power Rangers. You could say that the Power Rangers are to me what I imagine Star Wars is to a lot of people. I continued watching the rest of Operation Overdrive every Sunday afterwards, catching up with the episodes that came before Man of Mercury Part 2 and the rest that came after, loving it more and more. I remember being blown away the first time I watched Once a Ranger, learning a bit more about Dino Thunder, SPD and Mystic Force, as well as the existence of Ninja Storm and Mighty Morphin. I remember thinking how badass Adam was in that two-parter, same for Kira, Tori, Xander and Bridge. And looking back, I really love how Once a Ranger gave great moments to both the Retro Rangers and the Overdrive Rangers. Not to mention, I feel this scene,
as long as you keep fighting for what's right, you'll always have power,
was kind of a precursor to this scene in Spider-Man Homecoming.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
I remember being in shock when Mac was revealed to be an android, and the first time I had watched the Operation Overdrive finale, getting extremely emotional because it was the end, crying when Mac died, but also crying with joy when he came back to life. I loved Operation Overdrive so much, and I still love it to this day, that my parents got me the entire season on DVD after it had ended. I would rewatch Operation Overdrive on DVD so many times as a kid that I could basically recite the whole season. The following year, CITV syndicated the next season, Power Rangers Jungle Fury. I watched Jungle Fury every Saturday and Sunday morning, and I loved it. It was actually my favorite season as a kid, from Casey's amazing character arc, to Theo being hilarious and showing great growth, to Lily being so lovely, to RJ being possibly the greatest Power Ranger mentor ever, to Jared's very underrated redemption arc, and more on top of that. And after I had finished watching Jungle Fury, another season I had loved and still love so much, my parents did like they had done with Operation Overdrive and got me the whole season on DVD. And like with Operation Overdrive, I'd rewatch Jungle Fury on DVD countless times to the point of basically quoting the entire season as well. I was on a roll enjoying Power Rangers up to this point in my life. I had loved Operation Overdrive and Jungle Fury so much that I was craving for the next season. So when I was 8 to 9 years old, CITV syndicated Power Rangers RPM. I watched it and, well, I liked it at the time, but I didn't love it. I didn't know why at the time, but even then I felt there was something a bit off about it, but I couldn't figure out what it was. But by the time RPM had ended, I didn't love it like I did its two predecessors, nor did I ever collect RPM on DVD like I had the previous two seasons. I did try to convince myself that it was still good by giving it the benefit of the doubt because my 9 to 12-year-old self believed that Operation Overdrive and Jungle Fury was so great that RPM was never going to compare, not to mention when I watched Mystic Force later and loved that season too, all the more did I feel the way about RPM because, for me at least, that was 3 lightning bottles in a row. In fact, I think RPM may have sucked some of my desire to watch any future Power Ranger teams because the following year, when I had started seeing commercials for Power Rangers Samurai, I didn't really have much interest in it. Not that I could have watched it back then anyway, as my TV at the time didn't have Nickelodeon and CITV hadn't syndicated it. But then, in July 2011, my family and I moved back to Malta. There, I had access to Nickelodeon. While initially reluctant at first, I ended up giving Samurai a fair shot thanks to some encouragement from my sister. And I'm glad I did. I loved Samurai. Both seasons, in fact. Antonio was an absolute delight. Jaden had an amazing character arc. Mike and Kevin were hilarious together. Emily and Mia were such kind souls. Sarita was a cunning and great villain. The twist of the ceiling symbol. I loved the Super Samurai mode. Mike and Emily, in my eyes, are one of the best romances in Power Rangers, and I could go on about my love for Samurai. And while it was different, at its core it still felt like Power Rangers. Heck, I loved Samurai so much that I did indeed collect the complete 2 seasons on DVD. Power Rangers Samurai deserved just as much credit as Operation Overdrive and Jungle Fury in me being a Power Rangers fan. It reignited my desire to watch future seasons and even led to me checking out all the seasons before Operation Overdrive. When I had moved to Malta, I had started using the internet a lot more than I ever did back in England, especially since I was a bit older. Bear in mind though, I wasn't reading YouTube comments, fandom websites, reviews, or forums at the time. I wasn't interested in other people's opinions on different seasons as an 11 to 12-year-old. So I started watching the other Disney era seasons, Mystic Force, SPD, Dino Thunder, Ninja Storm, all of it. As I had hinted at earlier, I love Mystic Force. I also love Ninja Storm. I absolutely love Dino Thunder, and it became my favorite season. Connor, Ethan, and Kira were a fantastic trio that bounced off each other very well, all 3 of them getting great growth throughout the season. Tommy was a great mentor and a great Dino Thunder Black Ranger, and Trent's rise, fall, and redemption as the White Ranger was excellent. As for SBD, look, I don't think it's terrible, but I'm not really a fan of it. Bridge was cool, so was Sid, but sometimes the SPD Rangers can come off as maybe too arrogant or idiotic. I rewatched RPM to see if I end up liking it more. Maybe I would since I was a bit older and it's one of the darker seasons. However, I don't think I liked it more. I think I actually liked it less as I got older, but I still couldn't figure out why I didn't love RPM like the rest of the fandom does. Nevertheless, I would say that thanks to Samurai, I was probably an even bigger Power Rangers fan than I ever was before. I was really excited for the 20th anniversary season, especially since we were promised the return of every major ranger in history. I watched Megaforce Season 1 and personally, I loved it. I thought all 5 of the Rangers were extremely lovable. Robo Knight was surprisingly a Ranger who doesn't have a human form I liked a lot. Vrak was a fantastic villain, the episodes were a lot of fun, and I felt there was quite a bit of heart to it, and I cared about the characters. It was also around this time I started checking out some of the pre-Disney era seasons. I liked In Space, I really liked Lost Galaxy, Zeo was decent, but not one of my favorites, Turbo was middle of the road, Lightspeed Rescue was not really my thing, neither was Wild Force, Time Force ended up being one of, if not, my least favorite season. Sorry guys, but I don't like it. It started out promising, but then it became very central on Wes, a character I found extremely annoying. I didn't like Eric either. Jen basically became reduced to being defined by her relationship with either Wes or Alex. I don't think they should have brought back Alex just to make him a jerk to make Wes look better, as I felt it ruins Jen's motivation to go after Ransik. Katie and Trip were forgettable, as were a lot of the episodes. Wes and Jen's relationship really annoyed me, the time travel aspect was practically wasted, and the finale was a mess. Lucas was the only thing I could enjoy. If you love Time Force, great, but let's agree to disagree. And of course, there was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. When I watched it, I truly fell in love with its first season. As much as I loved Tommy's tenure as Dino Thunder Black, I also really liked his time as the original Green Ranger. But that wasn't all. Jason, Zack, Billy, Trini, Kimberly, they're all amazing characters that you can't help but instantly fall in love with, becoming not only some of my favorite Power Rangers of all time, but also some of my favorite superheroes of all time. Jason being an amazing inspirational leader, Zack being a lovable joker, Billy being so endearing, Trini being such a beautiful and loving person and soul, and Kimberly being very feisty and funny. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers became one of my favorite superhero teams ever, alongside the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four. Not only is the first season iconic, but it reminds me of Stan Lee's Amazing Spider-Man comic book run and the Christopher Reeves Superman movies, from the great middle ground between lightheartedness and heartwarming nature, to amazing and iconic episodes for each of the Rangers. Whether you're talking about High Five, No Clowning Around, and Plague of the Mantis for Trini, A Pressing Engagement, The Rockstar, and To Flee or Not to Flee for Jason, Different Drum, Foul Play in the Sky, and The Spitflower for Kimberly, Happy Birthday Zack, Itsy Bitsy Spider, and Foul Play for Zack, and Peace, Love and Woe, Dark Warrior, and Something Fishy for Billy. And that's not even getting into other episodes like Day of the Dumpster, Teamwork, Life's a Masquerade, Island of Illusion, Cleanup Club, Doomsday, Crystal of Nightmares, and the list goes on. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers became a season I love more and more as time has gone on, and it became my favorite season next to Dino Thunder. Same thing with seasons 2 and 3. Upon each viewing, I loved them more and more to the point where they too found their place amongst my favorite seasons, alongside Dino Thunder, Operation Overdrive, and Jungle Fury, and of course, the first season of Mighty Morphin itself. The more I come back to seasons 2 and 3, the more I like and appreciate Tommy's tenure as the White Ranger, and now I like him just as much as the White Ranger as I do as the Green Ranger in Dino Thunder Black Ranger. Even if I'm still not big on him as the Red Zeo Ranger and Red Turbo Ranger. I already loved Adam because of Once a Ranger, and I love him in Mighty Morphin Seasons 2 and 3 just as much, becoming one of my favorite Rangers. He was good in Zeo and Turbo as well. I just prefer him as the Mighty Morphin Black Ranger. And I love Rocky and Aisha. I honestly see a lot of myself in Rocky. I can be a bit of a goof and a friendly guy like him. While he was still good as the Blue Ranger in Zeo, I personally preferred him as the Mighty Morphin Red Ranger. Sure, he wasn't the leader, but he truly captured the responsibility angle very well, which in my opinion is the most important aspect for any Red Ranger. And I think Aisha is such a big sweetheart. I love her sassiness and her snarkiness, and her big-hearted nature made her so lovable. with her focus episode Stop the Hate Master being one of my favorite episodes in the whole franchise. Same with Rocky Just Wants to Have Fun for Rocky. Rocky and Aisha became not only two of my favorite Rangers, but two of my favorite heroes as well, and I especially believe they proved themselves to be great heroes with their friendliness, optimism, and down-to-earth nature, especially in episodes like Z-Waves, When is a Ranger Not a Ranger, and Rita's Peter. Then there was Super Mega Force. I'll admit, back then, even though I was only 12 to 13 when it had come out, I was very disappointed like a lot of people were. Legendary Battle didn't live up to the hype, the new powers I thought were time consuming, and even though I do love the supersonic suits, and I thought the mixture of Gokaiger and Gozeja in Super Mega Force didn't mash as well as I believe the Mega Force created team had wanted it to. I had also wanted to see more of the OG Mighty Morphin Power Rangers aside from Tommy and the Disney era Power Rangers back. And basically took it against the entire season when I didn't see people like Austin St. John, Steve Cardenas, Karen Ashley, James Napier, Walter Jones, Emma Lahana, David Yost, Caitlin Murphy, and so on back. However, I did always enjoy Vrock is back. Casey and Jaden's legendary returns and the Mega Rangers themselves were still great in my eyes. And time has softened my opinion on Super Mega Force to the point where I now, as an adult in my early 20s, consider it, while still a major step down from Mega Force Season 1, now an okay, decent season. I kind of like it now. But reminiscing aside, my whole world was about to fall apart, at least when it came to Power Rangers. Despite my then disappointment with Super Mega Force, I was still a firm Power Rangers fan, but when I was about 14 or 15, I began to explore the internet further. I felt I was mature enough to explore forums and other similar sites written by other fans. Yeah, I finally started reading reviews and other Power Rangers fans' opinions on the internet. You see, I started seeing these reviews, comments, and opinions of other fans around the time the series that basically reinvented the franchise came on the air. Power Rangers, Dino Charge. I watched Dino Charge and, if I'm being completely honest, I did not like it. It had some good stuff. I liked Tyler and Coda. I liked Kendall and Ivan. Chase was sometimes funny, and the Halloween episode of its second season was quite enjoyable and unique. But that's practically it. Otherwise, it didn't know what to do with like half of its rangers most of the time. Some of them I found boring, and some of them I found straight up annoying. No offense to the actors, it wasn't their fault. Sledge's defeat revealed to be a fake out was lame. Snide and Heckle had potential when pretending to be the Ranger's friend, but was wasted. Also, his redemption felt cheap despite Heckle acting truly evil earlier. Arcanon felt unnecessary. The Energems bonding to the Rangers was a rip-off of the Dino Gems bonding to the Rangers in Dino Thunder. The Arkham Rangers role for most of Dino Supercharge felt like it was recycling Ryan's role in Lightspeed Rescue. I didn't like the finale, and the two seasons had a tone similar to that of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, which I personally consider one of the worst superhero films I've ever seen. A lot of people have been saying how to them, For Love and Thunder felt like a parody, but even ignoring the fact that I, contrary to most people, love For Love and Thunder, I'm pretty sure they've never watched Dino Charge or Sonic Boom. So as you can see, I really did not like Dino Charge, and it's actually two seasons that have aged pretty badly for me. It suddenly became a toss-up between Time Force and Dino Charge for my least favorite season ever. If you love them, that's great. I wish I did, but I unfortunately don't. But that wasn't the worst thing in 2015 to 2016. Since that was when I finally became aware of other fans' opinions, I very much got a reality news flash of the reputation each season had, and how different many of them were from my own thoughts. Like I had said earlier, I love Mighty Morphin, I love Dino Thunder, I love Operation Overdrive, I love Jungle Fury, I love Samurai, I also love Mega Force, Mystic Force, Ninja Storm, and Lost Galaxy. And In Space was very good too. I don't have Facebook or Twitter. I never did, nor do I ever want them. And as I had said at the beginning, I wasn't on YouTube until 2020. And I'm glad I wasn't, because if I was, considering I was only in my early to mid-teens back then, I would not have stood a chance, especially if you know what the internet was like in 2015 to 2018, and what the Power Rangers fandom was like in 2015 to 2018. It all started when I had stumbled upon Morphin Legacy's article centered around the Ranger teams that never got a full team change in Super Mega Force in Space, Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, and Operation Overdrive. And when he got to Operation Overdrive, not getting a full team change, he said, and I remember what was written quite clearly, but since this was a season a lot of people didn't like, people probably didn't notice. My inner thoughts at the time were,
Speak for yourself.
However, I was really the one that was speaking for myself. For then I found his article on the crossovers throughout the history of the franchise, and when he got to Once a Ranger, he commented on how Operation Overdrive is considered by many fans the worst season of the franchise. When I read that, I'm not going to lie, I was heartbroken, I was hurt, and felt personally attacked. Operation Overdrive? A season that I love so much? The one that made me the fan I am of the franchise? And what basically defined the most important elements I look for in superhero movies, shows, games, and comics? Is regarded by most of the fandom to be one of the worst seasons? That was really tough for me to comprehend, especially since I was only 14. But Operation Overdrive wasn't the only one. Samurai was being ripped apart too. So was Megaforce. Not just the second season, even the first one. Some people were even calling Ninja Storm, Mystic Force, and Jungle Fury some of the worst seasons of all time. At best, people were dismissive of them. I also believe this was around the time people began calling Mighty Morphin and Dino Thunder overrated, claiming people only love Dino Thunder because of Tommy's return, and that people only love Mighty Morphin because of nostalgia. So all these seasons that I loved and still love were more often than not being punching bags for a lot of fans. The only ones that weren't being harassed anywhere that I enjoyed were in Space and Lost Galaxy. Meanwhile, on the flip side, the seasons that I wasn't really big on, Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, SPD, RPM, and the then recent Dino Charge, just to name a few, were being praised by the rest of the fandom as some of the greatest seasons of the franchise. Many people were calling Time Force and RPM perfect seasons. So upon learning how most of the seasons I loved a lot of people hated, and how most of the ones I didn't like a lot of people loved, I began wondering whether there was something wrong with me. Was I missing something from the likes of Time Force or SPD that others loved about them? Did I only love seasons like Operation Overdrive and Jungle Fury because I grew up with them? Did I only love Mighty Morphin because it was the OG? A part of me tried forcing myself into loving RPM and Lightspeed Rescue, and sometimes even Time Force and Dino Charge, just to appease the status quo, but it was no use. Like I said, as I got older, I found myself liking RPM less, despite having still not figured out why I didn't love it, and Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, and Dino Charge were not aging well for me at all. But because of these contrary opinions I had and still have to the rest of the fandom, I began to question my validity as a Power Rangers fan. And if that wasn't enough, certain Rangers I love were being bashed too. Rocky, one of my favorite Rangers and heroes, was regarded by a lot of fans as the worst Ranger. Again, that really hurt. And Aisha was being picked on too, which also really hurt. So were Jaden, Dax, and Troy. Nick was criticized for being given too much focus in Mystic Force, even though they were completely fine with Andros and Wes being the centers of attention in Space and Time Force respectively. Many people were dismissive of Kendricks in favor of Corone, and then Wes, Jen, and Eric, Rangers that I really didn't like, were fan favorites for a lot of people. However, lurking in the background stood Ninja Steel, a season that I was at first reluctant to give a try because A, I was disappointed that Saban wasn't going to adapt Tokuja, as I thought that was a unique concept that could keep Power Rangers fresh, and B, Dino Charge had started making me lose faith in the franchise's future, not to mention not many people were liking it. But eventually, I gave it a chance, with a major part of me hoping it could redeem the series. After all, a lot of people didn't like Iron Man 3 or The Amazing Spider-Man 2, yet I personally loved those movies. So I watched Ninja Steel's first season, and I have to say, it showed a lot of promise. While I did have issues with it, such as the Robot Aiden arc not lasting as long as it could have, the acting being hit or miss, and still carrying over some of the Ninja Turtles 3 isms from Dino Charge. It proved to be a more tolerable season than its predecessor for me. Brody and Preston were quite likable, Mick was a fun mentor, Calvin and Haley were a fun couple at first, Madame Odious was a cunning villain who was interesting, and it did try to have some well-earned heart, with Brody finding his brother and being reunited with his father in the season 1 finale. So a part of me began to believe that Power Rangers could come back, which was great. Not to mention, the franchise's 25th anniversary was coming up, Madame Odious was going to be the main villain of Ninja Steel's second season, and with the first season showing promise in my eyes, I was looking forward to the second season. And then they announced the returning Rangers for the 25th anniversary special, with many of my favorite Rangers coming back, Antonio, Gia, Trent, TJ, and of course, Rocky. I was excited upon hearing them returning, especially Rocky coming back as the Red Ranger, hoping he would prove all of his naysayers wrong, like how Adam had won people over when he had returned in Always a Chance and Once a Ranger. I was certain Dimensions in Danger was going to be better than Legendary Battle. Boy was I wrong, because when Season 2, or Super Ninja Steel as it was titled, aired, I thought it was a major letdown, and it hasn't aged well either. A lot of the promise from the first season was thrown out the window, it reverted back to reaching Ninja Turtles 3 levels of annoying, the finale was soulless, and some of the relationships between some of the Rangers became intolerable, making the second season of Ninja Steel feel like unnecessary filler that undermined the finale of the first season. Then there was Dimensions in Danger itself, and it somehow managed to make Legendary Battle look like Avengers Infinity War by comparison. The plot I thought was cheap and random within the season, the respect towards each ranger was uneven, and the Ninja Steel Rangers had no purpose in it. Coda was basically the only enjoyable thing in the special for me. And the worst part is, the Power Rangers, similar to Spider-Man, Sonic, and the Ninja Turtles, had often helped me feel better and more optimistic about myself whenever I'd feel a bit down in my life. The scholastic year of 2017 to 2018 was a pretty bad one for me. I was struggling to fit in my new school as my previous school didn't have a sixth form being the scholastic period for 16 to 18-year-olds. The head of the sixth form was a bully who humiliated me in front of my dad at Parents' Day. Some of the students were kind of jerks who'd antagonize me to some of the teachers, and it often caused me to feel alone. I didn't belong there, so I didn't even go back there for the final year of sixth form. But unfortunately, Super Ninja Steel didn't make me feel better. So for all of you who, like me, are both major Power Rangers fans and major MCU fans, and have often wondered why I love Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and Spider-Man Far From Home so much, when quite a few people have them ranked towards the bottom of their MCU ranking, there you have it. As well as them being movies I enjoy a lot and love for the journey their main characters went on, they, alongside Avengers Endgame, succeeded with Super Ninja Steel, and specifically Dimensions in Danger, absolutely failed for me. They made me feel better about myself after being let down by that sixth form, and helped me overcome that sad moment in my life, especially with inspirational lines like this.
I have nothing to prove to you.
You can't trick me anymore.
However, it appeared many other Power Ranger fans really dug Dimensions in Danger, saying how it was as great as Forever Red, or how it was much better than Once a Ranger and Legendary Battle. So I was yet again alone in my opinion. Super Ninja Steel was very much the final straw for me. The humor was getting worse, the characters were becoming less likable, and Dimensions in Danger showed which Rangers and seasons and their die-hard fans were important and which weren't. Tommy and his fans? Important. Time Force and its fans? Important. RPM and its fans? Important. Dino Charge and its fans? Important. But the rest apparently aren't, and as someone who loves seasons like Mighty Morphin, Dino Thunder, Jungle Fury and more, and Rangers like Rocky, Aisha, Ronnie and more, that really hurt, and I felt even more invalid as a Power Rangers fan. So after that, I abandoned the Power Rangers franchise and fandom. It all made sense. The fandom had become a dumpster fire, and I was barely enjoying the newest seasons, practically everything that had made me fall in love with the franchise, the characters, the stories, the humanity, had been thrown out the window in favor of bad Teen Titans Go light jokes, moments that causes the actors to embarrass themselves, and mean-spirited dialogue between the characters. So for 3 years, I didn't really look back. The Power Rangers seasons I loved, I thought I hated, because I knew I would have probably been attacked for admitting that I think they were better than more popular seasons like Time Force or RPM. Wes went from being a character I didn't like and found annoying to a character I absolutely despise, because I felt he, alongside Tommy, had practically taken over the franchise. I thought Power Rangers was not for people like me. I started dismissing it as something only for kids, and that I was only realizing it at the age of 17 because I had grown up. In hindsight, this thinking I had at that age was wrong and immature of me, but it was too late. I had lost all hope that I'd see Walter Jones back as Zack, Amy Jo Johnson back as Kimberly, David Yost back as Billy, Austin St. John back as Jason, Karen Ashley back as Aisha, and Steve Cardenas back as Rocky properly, as well as seeing any of the Jungle Fury, Overdrive, Dino Thunder, Samurai, or Megaforce Rangers back properly. Heck, if say back in 2020 I was to have heard Hasbro already started to invite older Rangers like Caitlin Murphy back as Ronnie, or Algin Abella back as Theo, just to name a few, my reaction would have been,
Too late. 15 years too late.
I did come across a couple of clips of Beast Morphers to check if I could sit through it, but I couldn't really get into it. The acting didn't convince me, and it looked confused on what it wanted to be. Not to mention, even with Austin St. John himself back as Jason, from what I can tell, it felt even he was taking a backseat to the Dino Charge Rangers, which reinforced my idea that only specific Rangers were important. Stuff like this is what made me pick Power Rangers for having the worst fandom for a while. This was before I got a dose of what the DCAU fandom was like. Beast Morphers clearly wasn't for me, but hey, if you liked it, awesome, I wish I could get into it. And when I came across the news of Dino Fury being the next season after Beast Morphers, all the more did I think the franchise had lost its appeal to me. Another dinosaur-themed season, 5 years after the last one, with the same color roster as the last? Count me out. I thought there was nothing that could revive my love for the franchise. However, a couple of magical things happened to me in 2021. Since this was the midpoint of the pandemic, I had used this time to watch any superhero movies I hadn't seen before. Captain America from 1990, Daredevil from 2003, Suicide Squad from 2016, movies like that. Including Fant4stick. Yes, I think Fant4stick is an awful movie. However, there was a moment in the film that really stood out to me, and not necessarily in a good way. During the training montage, Johnny refers to his powers, and Sue says this,
They're not powers, they're aggressively abnormal physical conditions.
which was very reminiscent of this infamous moment.
That is not spandex! The material is a self-assembling memory.
Well, it took me 11 years, but after all this time, I finally knew why I didn't love RPM. I guess part of me thought RPM may have been a little embarrassed to be a superhero show at times, insisting it's this super intelligent piece of art using over-technical terms for terms that don't need them. Don't take this the wrong way. RPM is not terrible like Fant4stick is. It's just a show I don't have strong feelings for. It's middle of the road. I also started understanding why most fans loved it so much, especially some of the fans who, during the Neo Saban era, had wanted seasons like Super Mega Force to have been more like in space. Because RPM was trying so hard to be in space. A dark, edgy tone with a massive stakes, a mysterious emo ranger who's the central focus of the season, that ranger having a long-lost sister who was abducted and brainwashed, freed, brainwashed again into a cyborg before getting freed again from the brainwashing, and that ranger getting the Yellow Ranger, with a brief moment of questioning whether the Yellow Ranger would fall for another ranger instead. Look, like I said, I like in space, but I do feel it sometimes suffers from what I like to call Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, DCAU, Sonic Adventure duology, Ninja Turtles 1987, Captain America the Winter Soldier syndrome, where it feels like fans want practically everything in the franchise to be like it, acting as if it's the be-all and all of the series. And I'm finding it annoying, I'll admit. But then, a couple of months after I had watched Fantastic, I was thinking about the good old days, about my favorite Power Rangers seasons, about my favorite Rangers. I was thinking about Rocky and Aisha and how I felt they never deserved all the hate they got. I looked up whether there were any other fans who felt the same way, and if they felt they're overhated. However, what I did find out was that Rocky and Aisha, alongside Adam, had joined the Boom Studios Power Rangers comics. Now, I had heard of the comics from Boom Studios. Back in 2018, I had actually watched Comic Historian's full story on Kyle Higginson's run on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers at Boom, from Lord Draken to Shattered Grid, and I liked what I saw from them. But the reason why, at the time, it wasn't enough for me was because, while it was good, it felt more like a Tommy Oliver comic book series, guest starring the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like I had said earlier, at the time I had become tired of Tommy and especially Wes being basically the center of attention. But then my sister had shown me the Go-Go Power Ranger comics by Ryan Parrott a bit after, and it was more of what I had wanted. It was an actual Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic book series. But then I stopped after issue 20 because Tommy had joined the Go-Go Power Ranger comics, and I thought he was going to be the main focus again. I was wrong, because once I had heard Rocky, Adam, and Aisha were part of the comics, I thought to myself, why not dive back into the comics, give them a proper chance, show my support for my Rangers Rocky and Aisha. So I found Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 40, the trio's debut in the main series, and read it. And I'm so glad I did. It remained an actual Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic book series. I found myself extremely engaged in the Necessary Evil storyline. It reminded me why I fell in love with the Power Rangers in the first place. The characters, the stories, the humanity, it was all here. I went back to those issues of Go-Go Power Rangers I had initially skipped and continued reading the mainline comics after Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 40. Ryan Parrott's run had so much heart in it, from Billy realizing how important he is to the team, to Jason and Trini's connection with each other, to Rocky stepping up as defender of Earth and overcoming King Aradon, to Aisha realizing why she was chosen as a ranger, and I could go on. It was after completing Necessary Evil I began thinking about coming back to the Power Rangers fandom. After all, a year prior, the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie had come out, and after I'd watched it, not only did I love it, but it reignited my love and passion for Sonic after kind of being put off by games like Sonic Free Riders and Sonic Lost World, just to name a few, and shows like Sonic Boom during the 2010s. Not to mention, during the 2010s, I wasn't really enjoying a lot of Ninja Turtles media except the IDW comics. I wasn't a fan of the 2012 animated series, nor was Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for me. And while I don't hate the Michael Bay movies, like a lot of people do, they're not great. But I didn't abandon the Ninja Turtles. This might be because I hadn't found the TMNT fandom as insufferable as the Power Rangers one, or sometimes the Sonic one at the time, or like what the MCU fandom has become now. But I never turned my back on the Ninja Turtles, and it was then I realized I was wrong to ever turn my back on the Power Rangers. It was then I decided to come back to the Power Rangers fandom with full force. I was going to make my opinions known, including my controversial ones, like I was already doing with my Marvel and Spider-Man opinions. And if people don't like my opinions, they're just going to have to accept that I feel the way I feel. And I think every fandom should do this. Respect each other's opinions and realize all forms of media, movies, shows, comics, games, etc., are not objective. They're subjective. My criteria for what makes stories and characters good are different from yours in all likelihood. Upon coming back, I've continued to read the Boom Studios comics, rewatched some of my favorite seasons and was reminded of why I loved them so much, watched or rewatched some of the Power Rangers movies in the lead up to Once and Always. I'm not a fan of either the 2015 or 2017 films, but that's okay if you like them. They're just not for me. The Turbo movie was okay, and I love the 1995 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. I've also checked out chunks of Dino Fury, and more recently, Cosmic Fury, and I have to say, I quite like what I've seen. I find it quite good. The acting is very solid, the characters seem very likable and interesting, the villains seem decent, the humor works for me, and I found the heartfelt moments pretty well earned. Also, to be honest, I really like the Cosmic Fury suits. I watched Once and Always, and it became my favorite superhero movie of last year, with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania at a close second. Yes, I prefer them over Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. While I do love the former, I personally didn't like the latter. After seeing Once and Always, I wish I could slap my 17-year-old self in the face for losing hope about seeing Billy, Zach, Rocky, Aisha and Adam properly again, as they were awesome in the 30th anniversary reunion for me. Sure, I would have loved to have seen more of Aisha and Adam, but I still enjoyed what I got from them, and I loved the dynamic between Billy, Zach and Min, and I felt it was a beautiful tribute to the legacy of Tui Trang. I've also found some amazing YouTubers who talk about Power Rangers with just as much passion as me. Chris Cantada Force, The Sixth Ranger, Deoxy360, Mighty Morphin Conspiracy Theories, Superheroes 101, Ren Geekness, Reboot Ranger, Walter Culture, who are amazing and kind-hearted people who are also fans of the franchise. And it was through these videos I've talked with fellow fans like Austin McNeil, Brent Beers, Dominikion Scott, Fen and CJ Forever, Michael Leary, Rider Forecast, Cyan Muderji, Shadow Spidey, Zero G Ranger, who are also friendly and amazing people. They may not agree with all of my opinions, and I may not agree with all of theirs, but that is perfectly fine, and they're very respectful individuals. I also discovered during this time that the post-Zordon era may have not exactly been loved when it first dropped either. Lightspeed Rescue was apparently criticized for having bad acting, so was Wild Force. If Wild Force was talked about back when it first dropped, Forever Red most likely dominated the conversation. Lightspeed Rescue was, at best, considered an average season upon its release. It has made me think that a lot of fans in the 2010s hyping up the post-Zordon era were the ones who grew up with those seasons, and that maybe even Time Force wasn't talked about upon its release either. This has made me look back at a lot of fans' praises for Dino Charge back when it had first come out, remembering that there were a lot of people comparing it to Megaforce, which, in hindsight, has me thinking people were loving Dino Charge because they hated Megaforce so much. In fact, I've got one better. If Megaforce was Sonic 06, then Dino Charge was Sonic Colors. If you're both a Power Rangers fan and a Sonic fan, you might understand my reference. But if you love Dino Charge for different reasons, that's perfectly fine. As you see something in it I don't, and I'm happy you enjoy it. Continue loving the seasons you love. As well as this, it was because of my return to Power Rangers where I decided to do some shakeups to my YouTube channel. In the early days of my channel, I used to make videos with no recorded dialogue, which can be seen from my first 3 ranking videos. What I'd have to say would be written down on screen like subtitles. But I had wanted to start recording my dialogue instead, and by March 2022, I started working on my first video essay, Why I Don't Like Miles Morales and Why I Love Rocky, Adam and Aisha, which took me 5 months to make. I chose to do it like this for 2 reasons. Number 1, especially at the time, I was kind of given a hard time for not liking Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, so I wanted to express my criticisms of Miles Morales and why even the Into the Spider-Verse version of the character didn't win me over like it did a lot of people. And number 2, I have always felt how the Stone Canyon trio, especially Rocky and Aisha, didn't deserve a lot of hate they got, especially when I see Red Ranger tier lists leaving out Rocky, but including Red Rangers like Eric, Hunter and Sky. So I wanted to defend them and show them some love, as well as kind of my thank you present to those characters for basically bringing me back to Power Rangers. Plus, since Rocky, Adam and Aisha were legacy heroes like Miles, I thought it would be fun to compare and show how I felt the Stone Canyon trio got right a lot of what I felt Miles, most of the time, gets wrong. Is there stuff in that first video essay I would have changed looking back? Yes. I would have mentioned that I did quite like Miles in the 2017 Spider-Man cartoon. I would have also mentioned Christian Hanna, aka the Hanna cast, as an example of a YouTuber who doesn't like the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. Not just the third one, all three of them he didn't like, instead of Farias Unlimited. As a couple of months after I had uploaded that video essay, I had unsubscribed from Farias because I wasn't enjoying his content anymore. I also think some of my line delivery wasn't great back then, and I may have gone off the rails at times, but I still stand by a lot of what I had said in that video. After that day, Power Rangers, especially the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, joined Marvel, Ninja Turtles and Sonic as part of my central focus for my channel, and I'm excited for what the future holds for them. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. I know this was a bit more of a personal one, but I really want to start a conversation with you guys in the comments below. Remember, all of you, trust your own judgment, be nice to each other, and thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll be back very soon. Until then, Sodium285 out.
If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have.